Hey, good morning. Friday, April 29th, 2022. Just want to add on compendium to the Borderlands broadcast from yesterday um, and expand upon some things I've been thinking about for the past week and go from there. Delicious protein. But first thing I want to talk about is I see a lot of it's crap in social media and in some small-minded military circles, um, thinking that the tank is a relic of the 20th century. Uh, no, it is not. And the tank is relevant in the 21st century because what does the tank do? Right? What is a tank? A tank is a platform that provides mobile, protected firepower. Right? Mobile, protected firepower. Who doesn't want that in combat? Right? Because without a tank, your next step down is a truck with some body armor and a machine gun. Right? I feel much better with a tank. All right, so the tank provides mobile protected firepower. The reason you see failure of Russian armor in Ukraine is they are operating tanks independent, not as a part of a combined arms movement and maneuver. Right? They're leaving the tanks without mutual supporting arms, which does leave them incredibly vulnerable. It leaves them vulnerable from the ground, from the air. It leaves them vulnerable in the electromagnetic spectrum. So yeah, there's a reason Russian armor has had failure. It's not a failure of the tank. It's a failure of leadership. It's a failure in competency and their officer corps. It's a failure to plan. It's a failure of integration. Just multiple failures stacked on top of one another that have nothing to do with the tank itself. The tank is still a viable platform in combat. Right? It provides mobile protected firepower. Right? So how does a tank operate? How do you best employ the tank? As part of a combined arms team. That's the way you employ the tank. Right? I employ a tank with reconnaissance, with infantry, with artillery, integrating air defense systems, close air support, attack aviation, rotary wing, right? With combat engineers, structured, organized, with a plan, and they all mutually support one another to achieve a purpose. Right? The tank, alone and unafraid, is highly vulnerable. An infantryman, alone and unafraid, is highly vulnerable. A howitzer, alone and unafraid, is incredibly vulnerable, right? But if I take a tank and an infantryman and an artillery piece and an attack helicopter, and I have them work together, and I have reconnaissance forward, this is support. This is mutual support. This is combined arms. This is where we start to get into combined arms movement and maneuver. When they're employed like that, you're going to have tremendous tactical success. Right? If I send 10 tanks on a road in a column by themselves with no infantry, with no supporting indirect fires, nothing flying overhead, nothing that is supporting to shoot down enemy aircraft. What do you think's going to happen? You're going to have 10 tanks killed, right? Surprise! All right, so the tank is not dead. The tank is not a relic. The tank is still a part of modern warfare. All right, it's terrible, terrible, incompetent leadership that has caused the failure of Russian armor. Right, and good, screw them. Right. So we're a big fan of that. So I just want to hit on that up front. Armor's not dead. Armor's still viable. See if I can figure out how this works. All right. A quick once over the world. Grabbed a couple things from Ukraine War Mapper, at war_mapper. He's on Twitter. Just switch up the maps a little bit, and this shows something that I'm concerned with. Right, but a few notes. Mariupol still stands. Right, the Azov Battalion, the Marines they're still there. They're still holding the steel factory, the iron works. Right, giant industrial complex right on the Sea of Azov. Still there. They're still standing. Immense pressure on them, but they're still there. And they can conduct operations in and around Mariupol. Right, which tells me Russia does not own control of the city to the extent that they say they do. Right, that's something I said a week ago. Germany's joining the effort. Right, joining the winning side. Right, and allocating military material to Ukraine. Germany really held off to ensure that they had gas and oil sources other than Russia before they announced military support to Ukraine. So good job, Germany. It's nothing new for the German government. All right, Finland and Sweden, they are going to formally request to join NATO. It's passed through their legislatures. That's approved, right, overwhelmingly. A year ago, it would have overwhelmingly failed, would have received single-digit percentage votes in their legislature. Now it's passing over 90% approval. Wow, right? So Finland and Sweden, that northeastern flank of NATO just got a lot stronger. The Russia offensive, it's still going. It's slow, it's laborious, and that's fine. So you look at the zoom in here, right? That's kind of this area that I've circled on the bigger map. All right, Russia's making some little gains in here. The things I get concerned with. All right, so if I see Ukrainian units in here, it's real easy to isolate them, all right, and then destroy them in piecemeal. This is what I advocated Ukraine do last week, right? Is start to conduct their defense, a mobile defense, right, and utilize the counterattack to isolate and destroy small Russian units, right? Or destroy Russian units in piecemeal, right? But Russia has opportunities to do this to Ukrainian units when they form a little bulge, right? Create a salient in the line, and that's happening very, very limited scope. But when you zoom in on a map and you look at it, and you're like, ooh, that's risk. And this is what Ukraine actually needs to do, right? It is to transition from a pure static defense out here in the hinterlands and transition to a mobile defense, utilize the counterattack, and that's really what they need to do, and that will also buy time and maneuver space for all of this support coming in from NATO and other countries, right, to include Brazil. That's coming into Ukraine. It's going to take time for the equipment to get in. And it's got to be transported, offloaded, received, staged, moved forward, integrated into frontline units, integrated into a training base. That's not happening overnight, right? If I say I'm providing, 80 T-72 tanks to Ukraine, they're not going to be there tomorrow. It's going to take a while. I'll hit my last bullet, and then I'll go up one because it's going to lead into the next two slides. Estimates are there's about 20 Russian vessels, Navy vessels in the Black Sea. They also cannot reinforce because Turkey has formed a blockade at the Bosphorus. All right, so Russia can't reinforce their Black Sea fleet. What they have in there is what they have. Right, and they've had two ships sunk. Right, the Moskva being the more famous of the two, but the Saratov was also destroyed, and that's a landing ship. Right, so Russian capabilities are on the sea are significantly degraded. And they're limited in scope to what they can actually do going forward. Figure that they have depleted a large number of missiles and any other armaments they can fire from the sea. Resupplying those are rather difficult. They can go into Sevastopol, they can go into Crimea, truck it in across the land bridge in the Crimea, load on the ships, take them back out to sea, and start shooting into Ukraine again. But complex task takes a lot of time. All right, a lot of effort, a lot of manpower, and increasingly less viable. Okay. And then I want to hit that other target, targeting in Russia and Moldova, right, and Transnistria. Who is doing this? That's the great question, right? So yesterday I started to advocate for Ukraine increasing their use of special operations, right? Ukrainian Spetsnaz, right? Because it's the same words as the Russian, right? So let me go down. And I really want to talk about unconventional warfare as a deep strike capability. That's why I'm wearing my Naval Special Warfare Unit 10 hat today. What are some things Ukrainian Spetsnaz needs to do to shape the deep fight, right? And the first thing I think is unconventional warfare. All right. And I take this from the UW Pocket Guide, as well as from open source SOCOM, U.S. Special Operations Command. So some basic soft doctrine things. All right. First thing I want to do, I want to support resistance movements. Those can be guerrilla. All right. Guerrilla forces in Russia and in Transnistria. This is not easy. You have to find the guerrilla. You have to find the surrogate force. They have to want to be your surrogate force, your guerrilla force, right? That's a key right there. Is you can't force them, right? They have to want to be the guerrilla force, right? And that's one of the key things we need special operations leaders to do, is to have the ability to connect on an interpersonal level, right, and not force but convince an indigenous existing unit or band of people to organize and become a surrogate force, right? In this case, I'm talking specifically as a guerrilla. All right. Towards the end, right, there always is a foreign policy decision on when we publicly announce and overtly acknowledge that we're doing this, right? And next key point on UW is it's not a prescriptive doctrine, right? Unconventional warfare has a different flavor every location on this planet, right? Even inside of Russia, UW is going to look different in Sochi than it will in Moscow, right? So acknowledge that there's not a cookie cutter approach to unconventional warfare that's going to apply in every situation. There are too many variables. All right. And that's why in the United States, we select our special operations leaders. And really a key part of that is the psychological profile. To make sure we have the right people in the right place to do the right things on behalf of our nation. All right. Some methods to support UW, right? These come from Special Operations Core activities from USOCOM, right? And talk about this is how you fight in unconventional warfare, and use UW as a deep strike capability, right? Because the deep strike's not just cyber electronic warfare. It's not just rocket or strategic bombing or deep attack aviation, right? Unconventional warfare is a deep strike capability. You have resistance movements, right? Those are just people who are resisting the government, resisting the regime. Not necessarily rioting, but protesting in the streets, right? And they acknowledge, and in some place like Russia, they're going to get arrested and probably beaten, right? You can foster an insurgency, right? Develop an insurgent group, an insurgent network, right? That's not the guerrilla force, right? It can be used as a surrogate force, but an insurgent group is not a guerrilla force. A little bit different, right? Insurgencies are less organized, less structured, and they don't look like the military. Guerrillas look like the military, right? So an insurgency, right? If necessary, it could be a counterinsurgency, right? We can conduct foreign internal defense, right? Which in this case, specifically talking Ukraine, conducting UW and Russia and Transnistria, that's not appropriate. Resistance movement's appropriate, and insurgency may be appropriate. What are we going to do? We're going to coerce. We're going to disrupt. We're probably not going to get to overthrow, right? But you need to coerce the population, work to coerce government officials at least, and disrupt Russian capabilities, right? In this case, Ukraine's not going to get to the overthrow level through unconventional warfare. Some other support elements of UW, all right? An underground. These are civilians. It's the civilian underground. It provides access to places that an insurgent or guerrilla can't get to. Right? This might be the secretary in an office building, right? The secretary or administrative assistant for the assistant minister of defense, right? As part of the underground, provides access to an area that's inaccessible to anyone else, but really goes around about his or her daily business. Right? Really, really critical, especially in this an underground is very. Russia and Transnistria are very permissive to an underground. The auxiliary provides clandestine support. Right? When we talk support, I'm talking about movement of goods, services, equipment, fuel, money, people. The auxiliary are traffickers, right? To put it in the not nice term, but they're trafficking on behalf of the Special Operations Force, right? The guerrilla, right? Remember, a guerrilla force is not a gang. They're not insurgents. They're not a militia. They're not mercenaries, right? A guerrilla force is organized and has a military structure, and we want in unconventional warfare. We want it to be a surrogate force. We want them to conduct operations on our behalf. Right, so it doesn't have my fingerprints on the rifle that's shooting. Right, it has theirs, but they are achieving my purpose. Right, and so that's a key. All of these organizations, structures, people, and the methods to support unconventional warfare are working to achieve my purpose, right? So Ukraine needs to invest in unconventional warfare in Russia and Transnistria to achieve Ukraine's purpose, right? And achieve access to an otherwise denied area, right? This can lead also to Ukrainian Spetsnaz direct action inside of Russia and Transnistria. That can happen. That can be a part of unconventional warfare. It's not preferred. Preferred is I'm using a surrogate force to achieve my purpose. Right? This, every once in a while, you may need to be a part of it. All right, and then always integrated in this is the utilization of special reconnaissance. Right, using the resistance movement, the insurgency, the underground, the auxiliary, the guerrilla force. All of these people they're collectors. All right. And we use them to achieve reconnaissance objectives that support, right, the utilization of unconventional warfare to achieve our purpose. Okay. So this is a little overview on UW, and I think Ukraine needs to invest into unconventional warfare to start shaping deep in Russia, right? And how is it shaped, right? We can use this to target popular support, to target infrastructure, to target the industrial base, to target the economy, to target Russian multimedia, propaganda, and start turning some of those things and weakening Russian capability to sustain the war in Ukraine. Right. Also, I gotta hit on this. Ukraine needs him in the United States probably, and this is another special operations core mission set. All right, core activity is counter weapons of mass destruction. All right, because we are certainly of an understanding that Russia will use chemical and or tactical nuclear weapons. Right? So, definition for CWMD: activities support United States government efforts to curtail the conceptualization, development, possession, proliferation, use, and effects of WMD, related expertise, materials, technologies, and means of delivery by state and non-state actors. Here we're talking about state actor, right? I'm not talking about the Taliban getting some enriched uranium. No, I'm talking about Russian nuclear weapons and Russian chemical weapons. So in the United States, we threw this under the auspices of U.S. Special Operations Command in 2016. And really that was done because some leaders saw a commonality between counter weapons of mass destruction and counterterrorism. So this is made SOCOM an interagency lead. As a functional combatant command, it is an interagency lead for CWMD. All right. And SOCOM also has the expertise in going between state and non-state actors and understanding those networks, those personalities, and how they work. So in this case, when I look at Ukrainian SOF and CWMD, I'm really looking at WMD defeat. Target the ability to deliver, transport, and employ weapons of mass destruction. All right. So we want to target the capability before it can be employed. Right? And that's what I would really want SOF to do. Really, especially when it comes to nuclear. Because once a nuclear warhead leaves the tube, it's not coming back, right? Once a round leaves a barrel, a projectile leaves a cannon, a missile leaves a silo, it's not coming back. Right? It's going somewhere, right? Got it. We have systems that will shoot them out of the sky, right, and blow them up, right? And they won't detonate. They won't detonate their nuclear payload. Okay. But I prefer to defeat that capability before it is employed, right? And that is a competency of special operations. All right, so some couple of special operations core activities that support counter weapons of mass destruction. Right? First, just like we talked, unconventional warfare. All those methods we can use within the umbrella of unconventional warfare. Those are tools we have to counter weapons of mass destruction. Right? We can use an insurgent group. We can use a guerrilla. We can use an auxiliary. We can use an underground, right, to defeat the ability to employ WMD. Right? We can do it through direct action. Right? I can take a Ukrainian Spetsnaz team, infiltrate into a Russian nuclear missile field and just start destroying things, right? We can go direct action, right? And I can enable all this with special reconnaissance. And special reconnaissance may be a way that we find, right, our link to UW or direct action solution, right? So I just wanted to talk those today. Talk the tank, still relevant, right? So I've gone in spectrum of military. I'm talking tanks and I'm talking SOF, like this whole gamut. Tank, relevant, 21st century weapon, right? Combined arms movement maneuver. Do not employ tanks alone and unafraid. They will die. Unconventional warfare. Ukraine's got to get there. They've got to find a way, right? And that's why we have the leaders we have in the special operations community, is they find a way. Right? And then they have to figure out which activities to employ of unconventional warfare to start to achieve Ukrainian national security objectives. Right? and acknowledge it's probably a little easier to do UW in Russia than it is in Transnistria, just the nature of the population and other activities happening there, right? And then Ukraine needs, and other countries need to invest in CWMD efforts inside of Russia through UW, through direct action, right, enabled by special reconnaissance, right? So that's my little 30-minute appendium to yesterday's Borderlands show. Still relatively slow on the ground because this is proving to be a longer war. Right? It's not going to have a fast solution. We don't want to prematurely negotiate a solution or convince Ukraine to prematurely negotiate a solution. That would, in turn, be unfavorable and allow for Russia to later come back in and do this again, 10 years from now. So need to continue to support Ukraine through sanctions, through economic and military assistance and aid, and also training and educating Ukrainian leaders, right, so they don't make the mistakes that Russian leaders have made. Right, so just wanted to put this together real quick, get it out there, and I got a lot of work to do personally this weekend. So hope it's useful. Hope it helps contribute a little bit, and have a great weekend.